started. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining another ARD Community Webcast. Today we have a presentation on the integration between ARD and Taurus. On the phone we have Sudhatri Mandal, who is the Director of Pre-Sales. He's going to be giving the presentation today. He'll give a presentation and also a short demo. If you have any questions as we're going through the session today, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We will get to them at the end of today's session. Also, at the end of the session, we'll be opening it up for verbal questions. So if you have any questions you'd rather ask on the phone, you can hold them until the end, and we'll let you know how to unmute your lines at that point. Okay, I'm now going to turn the call over. Take it away, Sudhatri.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. It's nice and sunny here in Northern California. So as Melanie mentioned, my name is Sudhatri Mandal. I manage the technical pre-sales team that handles CA's continuous delivery and continuous testing solutions. So software testers are under pressure to deliver fully tested software faster than ever before, while also improving the quality and also driving down the project costs. So in this session, I will cover how CA's Agile Requirements Designer, or ARD, is able to automate the process of test case creation to improve test coverage, and how its integration with Taurus, which is an open source initiative by CA, that can help reduce manual testing efforts to enable organizations deliver quality software to market at a lower cost. So CA Agile Requirements Designer is an end-to-end requirements gathering, test automation, and test case design tool, which dramatically reduces manual testing effort and enables organizations to deliver quality software to market earlier and at a much lesser cost. The optimal set of manual or automated test cases that can be delivered automatically from requirements modeled using unambiguous flowcharts, and they are linked to right test data so that you have the expected results. So let's look into how these requirements are captured and how CA Agile Requirements Designer can help with creating test cases and so on. So let's look into how we can get lost in translation while we capture requirements and share requirements across different teams. So here I have a user, and the business user, they want the application to do certain things. And then comes the business analyst, and they talk to the end users, translate their needs into a form of requirement document. They can use Word document, Excel, or tools like Rally, Jira, and to interpret the user requirements. These requirements are then passed to developers who look at the requirements document, which is not very clear, and they use their interpretation to start writing code. Then the testers look at the same set of requirements document and may interpret differently what test case to create and what needs to be tested. So we end up kind of creating and testing things that are different than what the original users wanted us to do. As a result, there is a gap, and there is a chance to introduce bugs in the SDLC, right? So with Agile Requirement Designer, we eliminate these things getting lost in translation. So we are bringing all different roles on the same page, looking at the same high-quality requirements created using ARD. So ARD allows you to define requirements logically so that developers like it, testers like it, because it creates test cases to provide them optimal test coverage. And then the more aligned the vision across different teams are, fewer bugs are introduced into SDLC. The end result is quality software at a lower cost and a faster delivery. So what does Agile Requirements Designer do for you? It helps build better requirements using visual modeling tool. This improves communication across different teams. So on the right, you see maybe a list of requirements, typically how business users communicate that with business analysts and what goes to developers and testers. But instead, ARD models these requirements in the form of a graphical flow. So it automates the creation of test cases based on patented algorithms based on this flow so that you can get maximum test coverage with a minimum set of test cases. So ARD model provides you with test data requirements to support your test cases for various conditions like negative scenarios, boundary conditions. ARD also provides you with test coverage metrics and helps balance between test coverage and risk to improve test efficiency, so that you don't have to run all your test cases all the time, but run whatever is related so that it makes sense and also covers the risk. When you have a change request and make a change to the model, ARD identifies which test cases needs to be changed, and or if you have to add new test cases to complete your testing. ARD also has the ability to create automation test scripts like with Selenium, Mocha, and others. And that's what we will cover today, how we can export test scripts through ARD and execute them with Taurus. And ARD integrates a variety of agile management tools like Rally, Jira, TFS to capture requirements and create the models, and also create test cases and post those test cases back into these tools. Similarly, ARD integrates with testing tools like ALM for test case design and so on. So CA Agile Requirements Designer uses a layered approach for model-based testing. The business analyst or the product owner creates and maintains the business flows or models based on business requirements. Now this helps with the understanding of the requirements across different teams without ambiguities. ARD then creates optimal set of test cases out of these requirements. The test data engineer identifies test data requirements based on the flows and automatically generates fit-for-purpose test data for the test cases using integration with CA's Test Data Manager. And this test data can be generated synthetically or through subset masking of production data. The services engineer identifies external dependencies in the flow and can use CA service virtualization technology to eliminate constraints that can accelerate code development and testing. And the test automation engineer uses the model to identify linkages for automation so that automated test scripts can be created. Here is an example of a simple model for a shipping business flow created by a business analyst. So each flow starts with a start node following by a process node or a decision node or a subflow nodes. And in this case, what we have is start node followed by a login subflow. So, and if this login is successful, this leads to shipping to subflow followed by a shipping to a package type process nodes, and then to payment subflow, and then completing the flow, ending the flow. So this is kind of how a flow looks like in the Agile Requirements Designer that a modeler or a requirements engineer would create based on the requirements. Subflows are like subroutines that that provides modularity and facilitates use, and you can use them. You can put the detailed business rules in the subflow, as we can see here, various subflows containing the business rules. And the flow or the subflow provides a model based on business requirements, which is the foundation layer. The test data layer provides test data requirements for testing the flow. In this case, maybe you're trying to log in, you need a user ID, you need a password, and that is basically the test data. And similarly, you will need other different test data for other different nodes, right? And the services layer provides integration requirements. So if you may be calling a credit card authorization service, that is an external service that you may be calling, so that is identified through the services layer. And the test automation layer provides integration with test automation, where you're creating scripts that will actually be executed when you test the test case. So let's now look into Blazemeter and Taurus. So the move to Agile methodology, organizations through their DevOps adoption and API proliferation using API tools is forcing the disruption in the testing market. So legacy testing tools and methods cannot keep pace with continuous application delivery and testing models. often inhibiting organizations from accelerating development speed and delivering high-quality releases. So this is where BlazeMeter comes in, so which is essentially democratizing performance testing. CA BlazeMeter is a next-generation SaaS and on-premises performance testing solution designed to help DevOps and Agile teams begin web, mobile, microservice, and API testing early in the development stage and also in production. So by running massively scalable open source-based load and performance tests at any time and from anywhere, like locally or in the cloud, developers can validate performance at every stage of their SDLC and also in production. So it's a pure SaaS solution. No setup is required. It is 100% open source compatible, meaning that if you write your test cases in JMeter or Selenium, you can run them in the cloud or locally using BlazeMeter. And you can run tests in public cloud and virtual private cloud and also behind the firewall. It's massively scalable, meaning you can have 2 million plus virtual users to conduct your performance testing. And you can also do performance test orchestration using Taurus. And this is where Taurus, and I'll explain that a little more in the next couple of slides. So BlazeMeter also provides comprehensive reporting and both on-prem as well as in the cloud, and it offers integration with APM tools, application performance monitoring tools, for a deeper level insight into how your application is performing when you're running the test, as well as integration with CI/CD tools like Jenkins in order to shift left your performance testing earlier in the SDLC. BlazeMeter provides REST-based API for integration with other tools. So BlazeMeter started with kind of commercializing JMeter, and it provides self-service load testing platform as a service, which is compatible with open source JMeter. That's how it started. But then it realized that there are more and more customers using other open source tools like Locust, Gatling, Selenium, and it came up with this open source initiative called Taurus that supports all these other open source tools. So today, Taurus supports 10 open source tools, and with BlazeMeter, it provides enterprise-grade features around integrations with tools, APM tools, scalability, reporting, security through login credentials, and as well as LDAP-based integration, and also support for all of these different testing scenarios and tools. So what is Taurus? So Taurus is an open source initiative that is sponsored by CA BlazeMeter, and it's an automation-friendly framework for performance testing, and it can also be used for functional testing. Testing scenarios are defined in a text-based language called YAML or JSON, and you can use it to a variety of text executors for testing. So you can have a same test scenario that can have JMeter, Selenium, Gatling, so that you can do your UI testing, you can do your API testing, all defined within the same scenarios, right, in the same test case. And it has the ability to generate load locally, or you can also run it in the cloud using BlazeMeter, and you can get consistent reporting through Taurus UI, which is a text-based UI, or using BlazeMeter in the cloud. It offers easy integration with Jenkins so that you can do performance testing earlier in the SDLC. And now if you need more information on Taurus, you can get it at gettaurus.org. And this also provides you links where you can download the tool as well as samples that you can run on your machine. So Taurus configuration, and I will not go into more detail, but it is specified in a YAML file, a sample of which you see on the right. It has multiple sections. There's execution, reporting, services, scenarios, modules, settings, provisioning, and additional configuration that you want to provide. If you look at these sections in the configuration file quickly, the execution consists of how long do you want to run it, how long do you want to hold it up, and then what is the ramp-up time. The scenarios are essentially your test cases where you define what type of test that you run, what are the requests that you make. Reporting is around providing what type of reports do you want it local or on the cloud. Some of the modules, if you want to load additional classes, this is where you would specify that. And then settings provides you some top-level settings for the tool. What's the default executor? And executors are what Taurus would be using to execute your test. I mentioned earlier, you can define, you can run different types of tests, like you may want to run UI test using Selenium, you want to run API test using JMeter. You would specify different sets of executors for your different scenarios in the Taurus configuration file. Provisioning is around where do you want to run the test. You want to run the test locally on your laptop, desktop, or you want to run the test in the cloud. Running the test in the cloud means your load generators will be sending load from the cloud to your website or your testing application. So if you want to run Taurus, you can run Taurus. It's a command line tool, and you can run using BZT. That is the command option, and then and you would run it with options and configuration file. An example is showed here. A command can be bzt taurus.yaml, that's the Taurus configuration file, and then additional parameters after that. And -o basically is saying that you override some configuration settings that are specified in the configuration file, but then there are other command line options as well. So CA Agile Requirements Designer Taurus Integration, it is basically what it does. It helps you create CA Agile Requirements Designer helps you create test cases based on requirements that you define in Jira or other tools. And it also helps create test data through integration with the Test Data Manager for your test cases so that you can get fit-for-purpose test data. Test automation scripts are also created for your test cases using ARD, and then CA ARD creates the configuration file to execute test automations scripts in Taurus and or in BlazeMeter. So Taurus is used to execute tests locally or in the cloud, and optionally you can also use the same set of scripts and Taurus configuration file to execute your test directly in CA's BlazeMeter. So what are the benefits of this solution? Now, the solution helps you optimize the test that you need to create or run so that you can get an optimal set of test cases for testing applications, improving your test quality and efficiency. It automatically generates fit-for-purpose test data that you can use through integration with Test Data Manager. It also generates test automation scripts in a variety of different languages, Selenium, Mocha, and the example demo that I will be showing you today is will be using Mocha. And as a result of the integration, now you can improve test efficiency, you can reduce time to market, and also cost. So in summary, CA Agile Requirements Designer provides an efficient way to gather and distribute requirements. ARD creates optimal set of test cases, test scripts, and test data using integration with Test Data Manager. CA ARD also generate test scripts for your test cases for a variety of platforms, and also configuration files for Taurus that you can execute using Taurus and BlazeMeter. Now, Taurus allows developers to execute unit-level performance testing alongside code development and unit test without switching context, along with integrating performance testing early in SDLC. Now, so with ARD and Taurus integration, software development and test teams can create optimal set of test cases and scripts, automatically execute them locally or on their development test environment or in the cloud. This helps improve test coverage, test quality, also efficiency. It improves application performance and automates testing so that the time to market is reduced and the costs, testing costs are also reduced. So with that, I would like to switch to my demo. And for my demo environment, I have a machine which is running Agile Requirements Designer. So Agile Requirements Designer is the tool that helps you capture requirements in a graphical flow. It can import requirements from a variety of different tools like CA Agile Central or Rally. It can import requirements from Jira or Microsoft Team Foundation server. And then based on that import, it can then go ahead and create your requirements flow. So here I have a new flow that I just created. It has a start node and an end node. I added a couple of blocks here called the process blocks. I can add a decision block. This is basically a simple flow checking if I'm an admin. If I'm an admin, I would do certain things. If I'm not an admin, then I'll do certain other things. I can connect them, and I can, if it is true, then I go to admin. If it is false, then I go to regular, and then finally I can end my flow. So this is a very, very simple flow. It has a couple of test cases if I want to look at it. Path Explorer is basically what builds my test cases, and I can build my test cases, just two of them. One is basically if it's an admin, execute the test for admin. If it is not admin, then it's regular. And I can look at the list of tests, steps that I need to execute on the right, and then this kind of gives the graphical flow. So this is how you would build a simple model. You can use accelerators by importing requirements from a variety of different tools, like I mentioned, Jira or Agile Central and so on, and they can then refine it inside ARD. So what I've done is I've created a flow for a simple web store. So this web store has, if I look at it, I have a start node and a begin node and a begin test, and then the begin find the product, I'll load the home page, and then find the product that I'm trying to kind of buy, and then click order product and product selection, then followed by begin shipping details, like enter email address, enter confirm email address, and all of the typical things that you would do. Enter the name, enter address, address information, and then finally enter card details. So I begin enter card details, which includes type of card, and then I invoke a subflow, which goes into the details of the subflow. This is my subflow, which is basically a web store mock. Let me open it through here. And that takes in the credit card details, and based on the credit card, it validates the credit card length, number and length, and finally it ends. So when this ends, it goes back to the web store flow, and then does the complete purchase, and then ends the flow. So that is kind of the flow that I've created in Agile Requirements Designer using requirements to test a very simple web store application. Now, once I've created the flow, I mentioned earlier there are a few things that can be done using ARD. One, of course, you capture requirements so that it's expressed in a graphical model that helps you reduce ambiguity. But in addition to that, you can also do a number of different things. If I look at the automation for a particular block, so I opened up the block for begin product, and this is where it specifies some automation script. So there is an automation script as applicable for each of these blocks. And then there is also like test data. So this one doesn't have anything. Begin test. Let's look at some of the test data. So for example, here. So you can see card type. There is some data associated. Card drop-down name. There's also some data here, right? So this data is either hard-coded or populated on the fly when I create the test case through integration with CA's Test Data Manager. So it does integrate with CA Test Data Manager to specify data needs, like in this case product name or drop-down name, what is the product selection, and it gets the test data through integration with CA Test Data Manager. And each of these blocks also has a certain test script associated with it where applicable, where I need to execute a test script to run the test. So when I create the test cases for these, And the way I would do that is I would go to Path Explorer, and I can now go and click all possible paths. It will give me all these different test cases. So when I create the test cases, for each test case, I will have a test script that is needed to run the test case. So let's look into the different algorithms that are used to create your test cases. So if I go and use these are different algorithms that are used. Full coverage, all possible paths, covers all possible scenarios for testing my web store flow, and this requires 118 possible paths. Now what we have realized that when we go through these paths and data sets, it does a lot of over-testing. We don't really have to go through all of it. Instead, what we can probably do, we can do full coverage with all in and all out edges, and when we do that, we have less number of test cases that we need to cover all the testing scenarios for all options where we are going into a node and exiting a node, also various possible scenarios for the decision nodes, and so on. That provides a better coverage of testing. And CA ARD provides coverage metrics. So I can go into coverage metrics and see that my node coverage is 67%, my in-out coverage 32%, my over-testing is 476%. So this is, and I can mix and match these to meet what my requirements are for testing. And this is how CA Agile Requirements Designer can optimize your testing by reducing amount of over-testing. There will be some level of over-testing because you will have to execute some nodes here for any testing that you do. Like, for example, you need to log in to the web page to do any testing. So there will be some over-testing on that. But in general, using this methodology, you can reduce a lot of over-testing that is done. One of our customers, a credit card company, uses this technology, and they have been able to reduce over-testing by 1,700% by using CA Agile Requirements Designer. So what I have done is that I can save these test cases, but instead I have saved some test cases here. There are 5 test cases if I look at it, and this basically tells me different paths for these 5 different test cases. Essentially, it uses different set of data and different scenarios here. And on the right, you can see the test data that are being used for different test cases, right? Now, I can go into the details of these test cases. I can check for modification history. I can also feed in test run results, and I can also look into automation script for each of these test cases. And then I can save the automation script. Now I can save these test paths back into my requirements tool that I may be using, like Agile Central or Rally or ALM or Jira, or I can save into test scripts like automation test scripts. In this case, I will go ahead and export the test scripts for these test cases into automation test scripts. And what this will do, it will generate the test cases for test scripts for these test cases, and then I can go to Advanced. Under Advanced, there is a section called Taurus, and what this will allow is that it will help build the Taurus wrapper configuration file, the YAML file that Taurus uses to execute the test, and then we can then use that to run the test. And this test scripts will be stored in this particular folder. So I've already created the folder there, and I can export the test scripts now. Now, when I export the test scripts, I can specify the executor. Remember, when I mentioned earlier when I was going to Taurus, I mentioned there is an executor. So you can have multiple executors in Taurus. And in this case, the executor that I'll be using, it will be Mocha, JavaScript. And I can specify where do I want to run this. If I want to run this in cloud, I will be using US West 1. This is the Amazon EC2 location. I can specify concurrent executions. I just specify 1 in my case, and only 1 iterated, only 1 time. And then Taurus accepts multiple configurations for multiple modules. So if I want to add additional module, I can add that here using add configuration. and I can then say OK. And this will go ahead and save the scripts, export the scripts successfully. So now if I go to that directory, which is here, ARD Taurus, Web Store, scripts, I can see that I now have test scripts created. This is created at 8:32, which is my local time. I have the Taurus configuration file and the Mocha test scripts for all the 5 test cases. So if I look into my Taurus configuration file using Node++, I see there is it's a YAML file. So there is dash, that's how it starts. And then there is the execution section, which tells me my scenario, in this case, test case JS1, and then concurrency, iterations, locations for these, and then another executor, which is for the test case 2, third executor for test case 3, and for 5 different test cases. And that's how the Taurus execution configuration file looks like. And then the individual test scripts are basically Mocha scripts that if you will be familiar with, if you're familiar with Mocha, essentially it has test assert, describe, test it, what you're testing, and then additional test it's, what you're testing, and then finally test after. So the test after and the test before are pieces that are added for each Mocha test scripts. And this is done in the, if I go back to my flow, and if I look at my begin test, right? If I look at my automation, so this is where I specify some of the initial sections of my test scripts, like the assert, the driver that I will be using. And the begin test will have the one test before, and then additional ones here will have the test it and so on, so test it, function, so on. So this is how I provide individual code snippets for executing individual blocks here inside each block. And then when I create a test case using CA Agile Requirements Designer, this is the test case. The scripts that is generated for this is adds up or concatenates all of the scripts that are created using the blocks. So the concatenate scripts that are in the individual blocks, so that now you get automation script for your test script. And then here it also adds the test data. So this test data is not hard-coded. This is something that is created, populated from data that comes from CA's Test Data Manager. Every time I run the creation of the test script, it goes and integrates interfaces with CA Test Data Manager and gets the test data and then populates that data into the test script itself. So now your test script has all the information that you need, including the URL that for this application that I'm trying to test, as well as any additional data that I would need when I'm running this Mocha script. So with that, let's go and execute the test case. So I have the test scripts here. These are the test scripts that I just created, 8:32 a.m. And I can run them using the command line Taurus tool. So Taurus is a command line tool. It executes using BZT. I can run BZT, and then it'll kind of give me, or I can do help. That'll give me some of the options that it provides, or I can do BZT Taurus. Taurus.yaml, and if I want to report in BlazeMeter, then I can just say report. It will run the test locally, but it will publish the report locally as well as in BlazeMeter. So right now it's preparing the test configuration files, and it will then this is the Taurus command line based reporting that you see here. And also what you're seeing is it invoking the web store. It is identifying a product, and it will fill up the data. This data is based on data that's coming from CA's Test Data Manager. It will add the card number, and then it will go ahead and create the purchase for the test. So that's how you would complete the test, and the test results, as you saw quickly, was published in the Taurus window. That was the command line window for Taurus. Helps you provide a variety of different. I'll walk through the process once again, but then you also see the reports in BlazeMeter. So now this is reporting in the cloud, and here you can get a summary report, which is provides you a good summary of the test run in real time. And this, if you're running this, I ran it for one iteration, so it completed very quickly. But if you would like to run it over a period of time with multiple concurrent users, the summary report provides a good summary of your test run in real time. And this is kind of the dashboard with the max users, average throughput, errors, response time, and so on. The timeline report, you can overlay any data that you have from the performance test with the data from APM tools like CA's APM or other APM tools. The request tabs puts key metrics, including performance percentiles, in a tabular format, like a 90 percentile and so on. The engine health, if you're running the load in the cloud, then this gives you the engine health in terms of CPU, memory. I was running this test from my local virtual machine, this is the name of my virtual machine. So it gives me kind of CPU, memory, and other stats so that I have visibility into my machine, and my machine is not the bottleneck. Errors, if you have any errors, and all the original test configuration that I would use, right? So this kind of a quick report summary. Let me run the test again using in the command window so that I can walk you through the reporting panel for Taurus. And very similar, but it's provided in a graphical, in a textual format.
The system has detected that a minimum number of lines are connected to this conference. Do you want to continue your meeting? Press 1 to confirm. If
Sorry
there is
about that.
no
We have people in
response,
the
the
audio
conference
broadcast,
will
so
end.
it's not registering callers on the line, but we should be good now.
Okay, excellent. So this shows you the test again kind of ran very quickly. If I add a number of users, which I can probably do, let me go ahead and do that, then I will be able to run it for a longer duration. So what I would do, I will go ahead and click Path Explorer and export the test cases into automation, export it, and go to Advanced, use the Taurus wrapper, and export it. US, West, 2, number of executions, maybe 4, number of iterations, 2, 4, and then save it. So now when I run the test again, it will have multiple iterations, and I should be able to see the test run for a longer duration. I believe I entered Selenium as the option, which is why it's downloading the Selenium. Let me do the export once again. And instead of Selenium, choose Mocha, US, West 2, then 4, 4, and scripts were saved successfully. Let me run this again. And now it will use the Mocha executor to run the test scripts. So here, once it starts running, I can walk you through the dashboard for Taurus. So this is the dashboard for Taurus. It's a very simple way for developers to kind of quickly have a glimpse of the tests that are running and the statistics and additional information around the machine where tests are executing. So you can see hits per second, a number of users that are connected, and sorry about this browser getting invoked and obstructing the view for this. But this is how the dashboard for Taurus looks like. You get the latest interval, the cumulative statistics, as well as various errors that may have happened during the text execution. What I've done so far is I've executed the Taurus scripts using command line, BZT command for Taurus. I can use the same set of Taurus configuration file and the mock-up scripts to run the test in the cloud. And the way I would do that is I can go to BlazeMeter and I can start testing now. And I can sign in using BlazeMeter, or I can sign up if I don't have a login. And in this case, I do have a login, so I'll just use my existing login. I can create test. You can run a variety of different tests using BlazeMeter. You can run JMeter test. You can run URL API test, multi-test. But I'll be using Taurus test. And here, I can upload the JMeter scripts that I have created, which is over here, web store and the scripts. I can upload the scripts. In this case, I have the Taurus and the 5 test cases. And then I can also run them directly in the cloud using BlazeMeter. So I can save this test name as maybe Taurus test 3, and I can save it and run the test in the cloud. So when I do this, what it'll do, it'll launch the servers, and I mentioned US West 1, so you can launch 5 servers in Amazon EC2 US West 2, and then it will go ahead and start testing. So it is spawning up the servers. It'll spawn up 5 servers for 5 different test scenarios or test cases, and then it'll start running the test. So that's basically what I wanted to cover in this session. I understand I did not kind of go into very much detail into BlazeMeter or Taurus. You can find more information for BlazeMeter in blazemeter.com. And you can get more information there, or if you need documentation, there's guide.blazemeter.com. Taurus, you can get Taurus information under gettaurus.org, and then for Agile Requirements Designer, you can have the information at ca.com, Agile Requirements Designer. With that, I would like to open up for any questions. If there are any questions, I can answer anything. Back to you, Melanie.
Sure.
If there are any questions.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can enter them into the Q&A box that's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Also, if you'd like to ask any verbal questions at this point, you can do so. You would have to click #6 on your telephone keypad to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask any questions over the phone. Let's just give it a second for people to ask any questions. Okay, so if there are no questions for today, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. I'm going to put out a poll. If you guys could please let me know what you thought of today's topic. We take your feedback and use it when planning out future sessions, so let us know what you thought of that. If you have any questions to think of later on, you can always feel free to enter them into the ARD community. We're constantly monitoring that space to answer any questions you have. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and thank you so much, Sudhashree, for the presentation today. We will post the recording to the community later today, and thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.